teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount and thanks upon it, but of thy redeeming love. Thank you, Jesus.
I think it says, at the same time, he hoped that money would be given him by Paul. So now the reality here is coming to a head. It's greed. His motive is revealed. Felix wanted a bribe. He didn't want salvation. Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. When I hear Festus, I think of Gunsmoke.
So do I.
Sorry, but I picture Festus here, with the limp and desiring to do the Jews a favor, Felix left Paul in prison. So Felix just cared about what people thought. He didn't want to upset the Jews. Let's just appease them. I know this guy's innocent, but I'm just going to leave him here. I'll let the successor deal with him. Chapter 25, and they urged him, asking as a favor against Paul that he summon him to Jerusalem because they were planning an ambush to kill him on the way. So here again, Paul is being kept safely. He's being imprisoned for sure, but these marauders and killers are out there to get him, and he can't get out, which is actually a very good thing, right? It's a providential provision of protective custody. And also, you guys, it was a season of rest for Paul. He had worked tirelessly as, a missionary and pouring his heart and soul into so many people. And how good it is of God to, yes, he was imprisoned, but yet he was set aside from all the busyness of the ministry. It's kind of like all of us right now. We've been kind of locked into our houses, haven't we? And in a sort of way, it for me, I don't know about you, but it's been a time of rest. I don't have all the demands coming at me from every which way. Places I need to be every day. Neri has the same thing. We're all kind of resting. And yeah, we're confined and we don't like that, but yet it feels good. Carrie, you're not getting up early in the morning to drive bus anymore, are you? Does that feel kind of good? So that's what's happening to Paul. He's just getting this time of rest and replenishment after years of service. And I believe God is using this time to prepare him for the challenges that are ahead, because he has many, many, many more challenges in store for him. So God is so wise in allowing these things to happen to us. And I think we would be very wise ourselves to surrender to his will and just, I don't like this, Lord, but whatever, for whatever reason you're calling me to go through this. I know you're going to walk with me, and I know it's for a reason. Boy, that's hard. That's really hard when you're actually walking through it, but it is possible. Verse 5 says, so he said, let the men of authority among you go down with me, and if there is anything wrong about the man, let them bring charges against him. Okay, the leaders, though, remember, they did not want to try Paul again because they knew he'd be acquitted. They did not want to do that. They would rather ambush and murder him, these religious leaders, before the trial. I want to stop and tell you a little bit about Festus. All right, kind of mentioned him. Felix, we know, is a very bad man, bad leader, bad man. But history tells us that Festus was basically a pretty good guy. And he governed well, despite all the problems that Felix left him. So he was different. He was a lot more level-headed, a lot more calm than Felix was. Verse 7, there they are bringing charges against Paul, charges that they couldn't prove. Paul argued in his defense. This is what Paul says. Neither against the law of the Jews, nor against the temple, nor against Caesar have I committed any offense. So he's saying it again. He's resting on the evidence itself, but also on his integrity. Do you know that our integrity speaks for itself? Have any of you ever been falsely accused? It's a terrible feeling. Whether it's by someone that lives in your house, someone on the outside. Yeah, people, I think we've all been there. You find out that somebody's been gossiping about you and saying things that are very hurtful, and you want to say, well, but they don't know this. If I could explain this or that. I mean, I've had people come to me and feeling really bad about hearing somebody say something about them that wasn't true, and they didn't know what to do about it. And you know what I always tell them? I always say, just live your life in such a way that no one will believe it. If someone says you're a certain way, don't be that way. Make sure that you're not, you know. Maybe we have a blind spot. Maybe we are that way. One time I walked into, it was at the Tees at the square in Rupert. And I had a fingernail that had come off. And I went and told one of the gals in there, Tammy, I says, is whoever, Clarissa. I says, Clarissa here, I have a nail that's off. And she says, oh, well, what nail? No, she's not here right now, but what nail is it? She said, let me look at it. Maybe I can fix it. She was on the phone at the same time. And she said, what finger? And I said, this one right here. And she said to the person on the phone, Michelle Snyder just flipped me the bird. And I said, you know what? I don't know who you're talking to, but they're not going to believe you. Right? I mean, if someone told you that about me, would you believe it? No. So that's what Paul is saying here. This reputation is speaking for himself. This person on the other end of the phone, who I didn't know it was Virginia. Virginia knows me and would know I would never do that. So it just was kind of an object lesson of just living your life before men, living it, doing what we talked about earlier. Not that I do it perfectly, because I don't, but if you're living in good conscience toward God, nobody is going to be able to hurl an accusation of any kind. And if they try, no one who knows you will believe it. That's the point. That's the bottom line here. Let's go to verse 13. It says, now when some days had passed, first I want to say, Agrippa, remember he's a king, and Jesus had told Paul that you will stand before kings. So this is actually a prophecy that's being fulfilled. Not one word uttered by Jesus Christ will not come to fulfillment. So now I want to tell you who Agrippa is, and I'm going to talk to you about Bernice. Herod Agrippa was the great of the Herod who tried to kill Jesus when he was a baby. This is the guy that Paul is appealing to right now. Do you know who his grandfather was? His grandfather was the one that had John the Baptist's head removed. So this is a long line of ruthless leaders, a family line. And now Paul is standing before this same, and Paul would have known what happened with Jesus. Paul would have known what happened with John the Baptist. Bernice, on the other hand, when I read that, and I don't know, maybe you guys did too, did you assume that Bernice was his wife? The Bible doesn't really say who she is, but secular history records that Bernice was his sister and that they were living in an incestuous relationship. So these are the two here that he's having to appeal to. Festus laid Paul's case before the king, saying, "There is a man left prisoner by Felix." So Festus is no doubt confused. You know, he's not as bad and evil as Felix. He sees that Paul is not guilty. He knows there is no evidence whatsoever against him. And so he's taking this to King Agrippa, like, help me out here. What do I do? And King Agrippa actually had no jurisdiction over him, but he did have a very important influence over Festus. When the accusers stood up, they brought no charge in his case of such evils as I supposed. Rather, they had certain points of dispute with him about their own religion. Again, it was about Jesus and who he was, who was dead. Here we go with the resurrection again, but whom Paul asserted to be alive. That is the bottom line. That's what all of this is truly about. The issue, ladies, is always the same. It's always about the resurrection. So let's skip to verse 23. So on the next day, Agrippa and Bernice came with great pomp. Oh, pomp and circumstance. You can just hear the horns blowing and see their robes and see the steeds and just imagine, you know, the most extravagant TV show you've ever seen of pomp and circumstance of this era. They entered the audience hall with the military tribunes and the prominent men of the city. Then, at the command of Festus, Paul was brought in. With everyone listening, boy, this one little man has surely caused quite a stir. It's hard to believe. All because of the resurrection. Wow. And he stood firm, and he did not waver, and he was not timid. And he was about to have an opportunity to proclaim Jesus Christ's death, burial, and resurrection before this massive crowd. What is going on here? And where did a preacher ever, ladies, where did he ever have a greater audience than this, as Paul was about to have? Verse 26, but I have nothing definite to write to my Lord about him. Therefore, I've brought him before you all, and especially before you, King Agrippa, so that after we have examined him, I may have something to write. He's the poor guy. He's like, give me something here. For it seems to me unreasonable in sending a prisoner not to indicate the charges against him. Surely Festus was confused. I just don't know what to do with this guy. But what this does, ladies, is that it presents an opportunity for Paul to preach one of the greatest sermons ever recorded. And that's where we're going to start next week. He's going to be able to proclaim Jesus Christ before this massive crowd. Hallelujah.
I hope if I'm in that situation, I am bold enough to speak up and to defend my beliefs, and like Paul did, and not cower back. I often think of some of the shootings and the people who have gone under their desk or stepped up and said, yes, Jesus is my Lord, that I would be one of those and not one that cowers back.
We believe in God the Father. We believe in Jesus Christ. We believe in the Holy Spirit, and it's given us new life. We believe in the crucifixion. We believe